Thank you for coming back after the coffee break. So, as you heard in the opening session this morning, or one of the early sessions, German companies only do one thing. I work for a small German company called SAP, and we try to do slightly more than one thing. But what I do in my day-to-day life is I travel around the MENA region talking to CFOs about their challenges and how we can help them. Now, for most of you, you would say, well, SAP isn't that for large corporations, right? How can they help us? And I think technology is actually helping SAP to bring it more relevant to the SMEs, but also some of the pressures that we see at the large corporations, they are coming down to you. Now, what I've been asked to talk about today is not how to preserve your cash flow or what is profit, etc. That has been covered in the sessions previously. But I've been asked to talk a little bit about how big data impacts the business models, how it impacts finance. So, with that, I want to start by talking about what is digitization or digitalization for businesses, right? So not necessarily for the CFO. So I'm sure you're all aware of speed, automation, and transparency. You know, it's about having data at your fingertips at all times and not wasting time with manual processes. Now, the idea of digitalization or digitization is to be able to do innovation faster. It is to be agile, right? It is to move faster. And a lot of the new business model actually involves a direct engagement, more than actually the traditional business way. So if we look at what it is we are trying to enable, it's the business models of the Uber of this world, where they're not bogged down in a cash flow because they actually don't own a single car. It's not the Airbnb, which doesn't have a hotel room or anything like that. What they do is they have technology. They can combine the supplier with the customer and take a small percentage of that. But we also talk to our customers. Our customers often have the challenge that they are threatened by these disruptive technologies. So an example is a customer we had who sold compressed air. So essentially what they did is they built compressors and they put air in containers and they sold it off. Then they started looking at their customers. What was this compressed air being used for? It wasn't just for scuba divers. It was actually for companies to keep their robotics going in their factories, right? So they redefined themselves and they said, well, if instead of selling compressed air, which is a very competitive market, you know, any day of the week another one can come in and do it cheaper, how can we redefine our business? So what they started selling to the factories would be uptime on the machinery, right? So they owned the responsibility. It wasn't some idiot in procurement who didn't order from them. They were actually making sure that everything was up and running. Now, if you think about that, how does big data play in? Why is that relevant for finance? Well, for finance, certainly it has an impact on the revenue model, right? It doesn't really improve the cash flow, but it could potentially improve the profit quite a bit. But secondly, finance take over some of the risk, right? Before we produce something and we sold it, now we sell a service. That means we have a risk. So what you need to do when you change your business model like that is you start looking into technologies that minimize that risk. So in this case, it was putting predictive engines out in the factories and sensors, so we made sure they didn't run out of air, or we didn't have a compressor that shut down. Because guess what? When you do these contracts, there's a huge fine if you don't deliver, right? So for finance, I don't think we should be leading the initiative in finance, but certainly we should be able to support it. We should be able to support it by going beyond finance and by having an agile system so we can change our business models. Now, that would all be very nice and very easy if finance didn't have to do anything else, right? But reality of the matter is that even with the new business models and competitors and all the worries we have there, we still have to deal with all the other challenges. So, I mean, we are almost done talking about the oil prices going down, but it is a massive, massive issue, right? We have a world that we don't really know where we're going with the whole Brexit, with the whole Trump. So all of that, we need to ensure that we are prudent enough to be able to survive. And on top of that, they come in with all the regulations and compliance areas. How many here are ready for VAT? Who's ready? So last week, a gentleman told me, it's going to be delayed. Don't worry about it, it's delayed. Well, guess what? It's been delayed once already, and I'm really not sure we can afford to delay it anymore, right? It's a way of funding the country. So I would suggest, if not talking to somebody like SAP about it, because it's really not a big issue, but there are certain things you need to start doing now. Talk to the Ernst & Youngs, talk to the SAPs about it, and get it sorted. It's not rocket science. How many of you are IFRS compliant? So there's a couple of you. Have you guys started looking at IFRS 16? Excellent. So the thing is that finance, in addition to being fancy and big data and all of that, you still have that responsibility of covering off regulations and compliance. And we are happy to help you with that as well. But what does it mean? Well, you still need the insight. So we rely on technology. Your workload has increased. Now, for finance people, it's often, I'm a finance person, so I'm allowed to say it. We often look at, come on, is that really important? If I get that report tomorrow, how big of a difference does it make? Well, it makes a difference if the competitor is more agile, if the competitor has the data, right? So we cannot sit back. We have to stay on the forefront. And a lot of technologies, and I'm not saying you need all of them, it depends on your business model, but a lot of technologies are coming into play in finance. So I'm not going to go into the technical aspects of it, but if we look at something like in-memory, what that is about is to be able to get the results faster, right? And have a more agile way of querying the data. So that combined with user experience is actually about bringing finance out of finance. Now in the modern economy with the modern models, what we want to ensure is that if I as a business user have a problem, I don't have to run to my finance department, ask for a report, and I get the number a week or 2 weeks later. That should be accessible for me when I'm in front of the customer. If you go and have your car serviced at Alfotane, you will notice there's a service clerk who's having an iPad, right? When you're standing there in the morning and you say, I do have a problem with my exhaust pipe, he puts it in. All the back-end processes are being run in the ERP system. He can see if they have it in inventory, and hopefully they can get that car back to you at 12 o'clock so you can be on your way. All of that is enabled by having technology and better user experience, because when you go beyond finance, it has to be easy to use, right? Finance people, we are very good at going into 3 different systems and getting the number, but the idea is it should be accessible through a simple workflow. Then we're looking at something like robotics, right? Now, robotics and artificial intelligence are often being put in the same box. Robotics and machine learning, the way we're using that in finance is to do what's called light-out processing. Light-out processing is about if no human intervention is needed, then stop wasting your time doing it, right? Finance professionals are expensive because they have a finance degree, not because they're good at correcting an Excel sheet or moving data from A to B. So we need to be able to use machine learning to do all the tedious, repetitive processes that really just requires a simple answer. So for example, if you think about every time you have a mistake in a phone number, it might be because a plus is missing in front of the country code or 2 zeros are missing. It's not rocket science. It's very easy for a computer to learn it. So we do use machine learning, and we will see that it comes more and more into these systems when we have big data. Because of course, if you have 10 invoices, then it might be a little bit expensive to manage it. But if you have thousands and thousands, it makes more sense. The predictive aspect is when you move beyond planning, beyond finance within, or planning within finance, or budgeting within finance. So when we start expanding into new business models, of course we have an increased risk, but finance also becomes a partner in how do we get the most profit out of these new business models. And that actually means that when we start aggregating all this big data information from our systems, from our sensors, That should correlate directly to profit, to revenue models, to cash flow effects, and that's where predictive are being used. So predictive we use very much in predictive maintenance analysis, right? If we have increased business volume, we wear and tear more on our products or more on our machines. What is the impact of that? But also looking at customer segmentation, right? If you look at customers from a very aggregated level, it's very difficult to predict what is going to be the outcome of change in product mix. But if you have all the detailed information, you actually should start targeting the most profitable customers. Then we have something that we strongly believe in within SAP, which is the networks. So networks is actually the direct engagement model, right? What SAP offers is we offer for you to connect to customers or suppliers. Now this is something that should be very interesting for SMEs because one of the big costs you would probably have is how do we get access to the customers? By logging onto a network, automatically you can put your products up there, and if you win the bidding, you get the deal. Now there's a small fee for SAP for maintaining this system, but what it will actually mean is that you get access to a huge market that maybe you would have to pay much more to get access to. So at SAP, we do quite a bit of supporting these business networks, financial services networks, so we can connect you to the banks, ERIES, so we can connect you to your suppliers and possibly your customers. We do it for traveling, so you can book your hotels, etc., etc. But this is very compelling and should be very compelling for SMEs because it drives down cost. Now, a lot of what I've mentioned, you would be right to say, yeah, but we can't afford a predictive engine and we can't afford to buy a massive database with all this in-memory technology. I think the last thing on this slide is what makes it possible for you. It's the cloud technology, right? What the cloud technology does, it doesn't mean that we don't have to buy hardware. Of course we do, right? Of course we need somebody to manage the service for you. Of course we do. But we can take a good technician and cut him across 1,000 customers, right? We can give you a slice of a server and we can let it grow with you, right? So we have much more flexibility and agility. Now, one thing is it moves it from CapEx to OpEx. That is true. I don't think over time it's necessarily a lot cheaper, but it does give you the flexibility and agility to grow as a business and not worry about it. So all of these technologies are in here. I think out of the 5 super technologies, the one technology that we don't see in finance yet is the 3D printing, but I'm sure it will come as well. Any questions to this? Anything that you find is missing? No? Huh? I try very fast, 10 minutes. So, the way we define it for finance, right, is we say it's real-time continuous processes with no manual processes or media breaks. It's never going to happen, right? There will always be the need for a finance person who can make that decision or that critical decision. But if you can get 80% of the work out of the way, and if you can make it, and if you can automate it, then do so, right? In order for you to be able to grow as a business. If you're not doing it, somebody else is doing it. And another thing is, let the data come out of finance. We call it, or I call it democratization of data. There's no power in you in finance owning the data. The data is there for the business to capitalize on, so make sure they can get access to it and be a business partner, right? Your job is not just to be a scorekeeper. Your job is to be a business partner. And that's what we work extremely hard to help our customers do. That is how we see finance. Any questions to this? I see that was the old presentation. I promised not to show anything technical. So if there are no questions, I'll hand it over to the next speaker.